Good day, all St. Lucians. I want to have a quick discussion on a major project that's taking place in St. Lucia, which is called GPH, or Global Port Holdings. It's where the government of St. Lucia has entered into an agreement to concession out all of our cruise ship revenue for the next 40 years. So they've not leased the port and get a rent. They've not sold the port and got any money, but instead what they have done is concessioned out, giving this foreign company, public company, the rights to all of the revenue that the cruise industry is going to earn in the port for the next 30 years with an extension of 40. So today, we know that we're collecting $6.50 US per passenger. We also know that in 2019, we were just short of 1 million passengers. So I think it's fair to say that over a 40-year period of time, and if we were to estimate as to how many passengers we think that St. Lucia would get in the next 40 years on average, and given the fact that we know the cruise industry is growing, let's just keep it at 1 million passengers per year for the next 40 years. So that's 40 million passengers. We also know, when we were in government, that the cruise industry had already agreed that the head tax had to increase because they recognized that the governments needed to expand their ports. And they had agreed to a price somewhere between $10 and $12. So again, let's just assume that over the next 40 years that we're going to earn $10. That means we're going to earn 10 million US dollars a year for 40 years. That's 400 million US dollars in revenue. We also know that this is a very profitable business because other than whatever debts you have and the payment of those debts, the manpower that you require to oversee our cruise ship port is very minimal. And so easily, the company that is running it is going to make a 50% profit, meaning 5 million US dollars a year in expenses, $10 million a year in revenue, $5 million a year in profit. That means they're going to have a profit of over 200 million US dollars over the next 40 years. Now, let's understand what the government of St. Lucia has given up, which is $400 million in revenue and a possibility of 200 million US dollars in profit. And what have they gotten? They got a promise by this company that they're going to invest in the port. They're going to take over SLASPA's debt of 20 million EC dollars, and they're going to invest 30 million US dollars on the North Wharf, Point Seraphin, the Vendors Arcade, Banans, and Soufriere. Now think of it for a moment. So here's a company that's getting all of our revenue, and then are turning around and using the government's revenue, the people's revenue, to improve the port to help themselves. And if they build these facilities in the next 2 or 3 years, in 40 years' time, those assets would have been fully depreciated, meaning economically, accounting-wise, they would have no value, and it would more than likely be time for us to reinvest. Where's the government going to get the money to reinvest in its own port? Because it's given away all of the revenue for the next 40 years. Even scarier is that when you do a background check on GPH, GPH has over $600 million of debt. Last year, they lost over 50 cents per share. And this year they've lost 41 cents a share. Now, if GPH were to go into bankruptcy, and it means a receiver would have been appointed to recover the assets. One of those assets is this concession that the government of St. Lucia have given them, which is $400 million in revenue and over 200 million US dollars in profit. how much would the government of St. Lucia have to pay the receiver to get our revenue back? That's the value. So in fact, the government of St. Lucia should have received a cash payment from GPH to buy the concession. Now, remember, in opposition, they spoke about tendering. Why was this deal not tendered? Particularly if it's not a PPP. They're not getting a cash payment up front. I think if it had been tendered, we clearly would have had a greater appreciation as to what the value would have been. Puerto Rico was tendered. The Bahamas was tendered. All of these port concessions were tendered. In the case of the Bahamas, GPH won the tender, but GPH is a partner, 49% shareholder, and the government is a 49% shareholder as well. In all of the deals, it's either GPH is leasing, meaning paying rent, or is in partnership. Why is it in St. Lucia that we've given up all of this revenue on the pretext that they're going to make this investment, but when you really look at it, the investment is to expand capacity in the port to help them. Now, we've come accustomed to it. The Labour Party wants to deflect. And instead of dealing with some of the critical issues, is it true that there's going to be no development in view for it? The Minister of Investment all but confirmed that. Oh, he's going to leave it to the private sector. That's a cop-out. So it means the people who are in view for it are going to suffer. The government of St. Lucia again is going to lose revenue because getting 75,000 passengers coming in, home porting into St. Lucia, we collect $100 the airport tax alone. We're foregoing that revenue for the next 40 years. The people in the South who could benefit by having more active tourism, the tours, the taxi drivers, hoteliers, everybody who would have benefited in the South. Places like Labrie and Choiseul and the two Mikus that have never seen cruise ship passengers now would also be able to benefit from this growing industry. The other thing the government said, oh, look what you've done at DSH, and look what you did at Cabot. So I think that those are very good examples. So in the case of Cabot, this was not a government asset. There was no development at Cabot. Bank of Nova Scotia wanted to leave St. Lucia and decided to sell the asset. And yes, NIC could have bought the asset, but NIC did not have the capacity to develop the asset. Cabot bought the asset from Bank of Nova Scotia. And instead of buying the land, NIC decided to finance the purchase of the land. And in exchange, Cabot gave them the 400 acres of land as collateral. And that 400 acres had been valued, market value of 90 million. So it means that NIC was more than covered. And even if you couldn't get the $90 million, you would have gotten substantially more than what NIC was lending, which was the 30. We have the benefit of hindsight. Cabot did exactly what they said they were going to do and what we expected them to do. Build a world-class golf course. Environmentally friendly, sustainable, significantly enhancing land values in Gros Islet. And that in the first year, the golf course has been ranked number 76 in the world. Only one other Caribbean golf resort has been on that list, and that's from Dominican Republic. And they're ranked 75. And the expectation is that in the next 5 years, Cabot St. Lucia will be ranked in the top 25 golf courses in the world, attracting some of the biggest golfers and some of the wealthiest people to come and live in St. Lucia. Over 200 villas are going to be built. So in the construction phase, and then once they're operational, the staffing, chefs, villa managers, housekeepers, gardeners, tech support persons, catering. The list goes on of the spin-offs. So that's not like the GPH deal, where you have a government asset that's generating revenue and has been generating revenue for years. In fact, SLASPA has always made money. Then let's look at DSH. DSH was a government asset. There was no business activity on that land. No taxes, no jobs that were being generated. And the government entered into a PPP. So we put 180 acres, invested it into DSH for them to build a horse racing track. Because the horse racing track would be the catalyst for the hotels, the real estate development, the universities, everything else that was going to be built around it. And instead of selling the land, we leased it for 99 years. The dollar is not what we thought the economical value was, but contractually, you have to put a dollar amount. So it's a token amount, but the fact is that in leasing the land, it was on the condition that DSH built the horse racing track, which they did, using their own money. Labour Party said in opposition that Teo was using CIP money. They've been in office for 2.5 years. There's absolutely no evidence they've provided, and they cannot provide because DSH put their own money into the horse racing track. The remaining amount of land was being sold to DSH for more money than what the Labour Party had sold Black Bay, which is beachfront property, to that developer. And when he was purchasing that land, was on the condition that he was going to develop it. We were bringing a university. We were expanding the horse racing, new villas, new hotels were coming in. And then at Il Pirata site, we were reclaiming land like they've just done in St. Vincent, like they've done in other parts of the world, to expand the beachfront, put in a cruise ship port, put in office spaces and apartments to attract more persons to come and live in St. Lucia so we could grow the economy. I don't know how the Labour Party even wants to make a comparison between those two types of investments and GPH. So hopefully that we can all appreciate more what we were doing to build a new St. Lucia and what this government is doing, which is to give away St. Lucia. Thank you.